Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, the federal government recently announced plans to regularize electricity tariffs in a bid to address disparities in the current billing system, as well as encourage investment in the power sector. The Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, made this known at the ongoing public presentation of the National Integrated Electricity Policy and Nigeria Integrated Resource Plan on Thursday in Abuja. He said the government is considering this option over the slow pace of migration to Band A customers, which he attributed to the reluctance of distribution companies to make the necessary investments. Under the current structure, customers in Band B who enjoy 17 to 18 hours of electricity supply pay 63 naira per kilowatt hour, while those in Band A with only 2 hours more of supply are charged 209 naira per kilowatt hour. Now, this is one of the topics Tuesday Live will be focusing on tonight. The program will also take on the Special Seats Bill and women's political representation, why it matters. But first, let's deal with X-raying the National Integrated Electricity Policy, and let's get to see this background report put together by correspondent Joshua Ojitu.
In 2001, federal government enacted a policy document, that is the National Electric Power Policy, the document that midwifed privatization and commercialization of the power sector. This document gave birth to the Electricity Act, or the Electric Power Sector Reform Act of 2005, and also the establishment of an independent regulator, that is the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. The document was used for the privatization of the power sector in 2013. Now, 24 years after, and with the new Electricity Act, a new policy document was unveiled, and that is the National Integrated Electricity Policy. The document has 8 pages that contain all the reforms in the power sector.
The National Integrated Electricity Policy highlights direction of the power sector, transiting to multi-tier participation and open the electricity wholesale market from single buyer model to bilateral contracts. While acknowledging the challenges in the sector, the policy document identifies opportunities for investors, especially in the renewable subsector, as Nigeria targets universal access to electricity by the year 2030. The document also highlights need for human resource capability development for the power sector, with the Federal Ministry of Power to establish an integrated capacity development program with an on-the-job training and certification, as well as ensure gender equality. During the unveiling of the policy document, Minister of Power Adebayo Adelabu hints on plan to review electricity tariff for customers not in Band A and recapitalization of the distribution companies for efficient service delivery.
Let's collapse the bands to A, B, and C, so that we can actually, because the gap between the Band A tariffs and the Band B and C, D and E is just too wide. It's just too wide. And a Band B that is enjoying 18, 17 hours is paying 63 naira. While someone that's enjoying 12, 20 hours, 2 hours difference of supply is paying 209. So we believe it's not fair. It is not just. And we must be able to carry out some level of regularization. So this is not tariff increase, because our tariff will never go beyond what the Band A is paying. They will need to regularize, internal regularization of the tariffs among the existing banks. So it will be fair, it will be just.
Also unveiled is the Nigeria Integrated Resource Plan, which is a comprehensive approach to national power system planning that includes, on the supply side, a holistic assessment of national energy resources, and on the demand side, opportunities for energy efficiency to derive a least cost combination of supply and demand measures.
Integrated Resource Plan, which we are also handing over today, which I believe go a long way in planning, strategic planning for the sector, and ensuring that our set objectives are achieved?
The resource planning of a reliable and resilient power system requires a lot of care and time. And resource planning is a life environment. Therefore, resource planning never sleeps. So this is a document, but it is alive. It's not a closed document, it's an open document.
Today's events mark a great milestone for the sector in delivering the Nigeria electricity policy and the Nigeria Integrated Resource Plan for Nigeria's energy sector, and demonstrates the commitment of UK and Nigerian governments to addressing Nigeria's energy sector challenges.
Development partners collaborated with the Federal Ministry of Power to develop the policy document expected to be approved by the Federal Executive Council and gazetted for implementation.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. That's talking about the integrated power policy. Let me introduce our guests. I would like to welcome to this program Idris Muhammad, who is a former MD, CEO of the Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me, Cyril.
All right. We're also joined by Bodifa Dipe. He is a power sector analyst. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. And so the issues are quite many, but let's look at it on a broad perspective. If we say the National Integrated Electricity Policy, gentlemen, you two are very familiar with this industry. So what's this all about? Who goes first? Yes.
Okay, let me take the first shot.
Okay,
I think first and foremost, on a lighter note, some of us were waiting for the minister not to bring about this document because it says the document must come out 1 year after the enactment of the EA to 2023. So we were actually waiting quietly to see that the minister did not do it so that we can go to court and obtain an order asking the minister to do it. But let's congratulate the minister. The two documents are very important. The first one on the National Integrated Electricity Policy, about 84 pages or thereabout, and the other one that speaks to the financing or the revenue, it's about 92 pages. To the extent of having a policy, it defines direction, and it's coming 24 years after the very first one was brought to be, and that very first one, as Joshua did in his report, or did say in his report, is formed the nucleus of the Electricity Reform Act, which gave birth to the privatization. So that Electricity Reform Act, the fundamental thing with that document is that it brought about the privatization of the power sector, or the divestment of government equity, giving 60% to the public and then retaining 40%. Now, this document, a fundamental thing that you see there, which makes it different from previous documents, is the involvement of the federating units in the power sector now. Before this time, or based on the 2005 Electricity Act or EPSTRA, states were not allowed. So you now have a situation where a policy is beginning to define the extent to which states, because we now have a federal regulatory agency, a federal government that is a major player and had been a major player in the power sector, and then you have the federating units or the states now coming into the markets. The legal framework is not going to be as easy as they seem. Apart from that, even on the field of play, we are going to find a lot of challenges coming up, and you need a policy document like this to be able to define who does what and to what extent are you going to do what. For instance, if there's going to be cross-border trading, what are the defining parameters that will bring about a seamless operation, that there will be no clash between the states and the federal government. So these are some of the things that this policy is intended to achieve. Otherwise, it's not departing substantially or radically from what had happened before. So for some of us, we are asking the question, what exactly is the policy going to do that we don't know about currently?
All right, which is the same question so many others are asking. You have the Electricity Act, the Reform Act. That's just a year ago. Yes, a document has been in place for 24 years. So what most Nigerians would be looking out for were fundamental departures from what it is, apart from the fact that states are now players in this industry. So if you just take that away, and the challenges you spoke about, then you realize that already, even with the setup we have, the whole gamut of the electricity supply chain, distribution, generation, and all that is steeped in all kinds of controversies and confusing details with all the companies. And we had to make sense out of all of those. But here we are with this policy document. Let's hear your views on that.
Thank you, Cyril. And I will just continue from where my friend stopped. I have my own opinion. My opinion is, like you said, there seems to be a lot of confusion in the sector. You are not sure which one is the first, the baby, or the mother giving birth to the baby. Now, we have an excellent policy document that provided for the privatization of the electricity subsector in Nigeria. You know that document, the the Power Electricity Act, is such a perfect document that if it was actually adhered to and interpreted within the context of the content of that act, we will not find ourselves where we are today. So strangely, it's like putting the cart before the horse. What have we substantially achieved in the last 24 years? In the last 24 years, what we should be discussing right now is for the Honorable Minister of Power to present a scorecard of the sector. And that scorecard of the sector would highlight all the achievements that the various part of the sector has been able to achieve. Now, where that scorecard is not provided, and Nigerians are not aware of actually the achievements of the sector. Now, that's a major issue that must be addressed before you talk about the policy initiation of the sector. So by and large, I think what we need to do right now is to present the scorecard of the sector. Presenting the scorecard of the sector will mean what has the distribution sector achieved in the last how many years that it was privatized. The transmission company, the same. The generation company, the same. There are conditions that are provided for, all right, in the act, which engenders the successful implementation of a very, very sound electric power sector in Nigeria. But are we having that now? We should be discussing what have we achieved? How have we been able to achieve those? What are the bottlenecks that we have encountered in the process of achieving those milestones? Are those informations, are they available? if those informations are not available, so what is the basis for now saying that you are now discussing a policy that already provided or gave birth to the baby that is called the privatized electricity sector in Nigeria? It doesn't look like there is a basis for carrying out that assessment because that scorecard that is critical is not yet been provided. And I hope that if the Honorable Minister of Power is listening to this program, he will put that first. Let's have the scorecard of the achievements of the sector. Let us know what are the pitfalls. Let us know how do we proceed. And rather than creating some sort of additional confusion in the sector, I hope that with the determination of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we should be able to give him a sound advice on how he can really achieve better result of managing the privatized entities in Nigeria. Otherwise, we'll still be groping in the dark, and that's my opinion.
Well, one of the things you hear all the time about this sector is the level of investment. At the time the privatization took place, the understanding was that those who found themselves the new owners of these companies, we are going to inject much needed investments into them. That didn't happen. Then we went to the stage where they secured loans to be able to do that. And of course, we all know how that ended and what it led to. So we have this policy. In your view, how will this stimulate investment in the sector and ensure a coordination of the subnationals now who are participants?
I think for a long time to come, not just by reason of this policy, the issue of liquidity will continue to define the state of health of the sector, whether the sector will remain in the ICU unit or whether it will be brought to the main ward or it will be able to work on the streets and give Nigeria the kind of power sector that we truly want and deserve as a nation. It's important to say that the market is there. You can't have a country of 200 million people and be afraid of doing investments in that kind of geography. But unfortunately, policy instruments such as this one that we are extraying have also not allowed that confidence that one would have wanted to exude in relation to a sector that is as important as the power sector. If not for the fact that crude oil is in hard currency, I think the richest sector in any economy is the electricity sector. Absolutely. Because you get money per second, in fact, microsecond. And with the introduction of prepaid meters, you even pay ahead. So ordinarily, no player in the tripartite arm of the sector or the value chain should be complaining about funds. But because ab initio, certain issues were gotten wrong. What am I saying? In the first instance, how have we taken this sector? Is it a commodity? Is electricity a commodity to us or a social amenity? When you call it a commodity, then you want to price it rightly. As we speak today, the most we can recover, or the most we have recovered, is 30% of cost of production. And of that 30%, you can be sure that Band A is carrying about 90% of the burden. And that's what the minister tried to bring out when he said that The difference between band A and band B is just 2 hours. Yet band A is paying about over 200.
Sorry to cut you.
Please go ahead, sir.
In any case,
yes,
it's
sir.
even taking things too far.
Yes.
18 hours, 20 hours. Some of us have consistently challenged those figures to say, what is the percentage of the so-called band A customers who enjoy 20 hours electricity? Certainly not me.
I know that as a big brother, you had confronted me when I was in AEDC now and again, and so it tells you the currency of the conversation. I've left AEDC for about 36 months now, and this conversation is still there. And we were having it before I left AEDC. Exactly. And it's not you alone. Across the spectrum, band A customers are crying. They are asking the question, especially now that the rains are beginning to creep in.
Yes.
People are good. I mean, they have started asking the question, am I sure that I'm going to be having that regularity that is being spoken about? Yet they pay. I mean, if you put in 1,000, you can't get more than 4.4 units. No. If you put in 20,000, you can't get more than 80-something units. I hope my mathematics, I mean, my arithmetic is right. But that does not, and we must be fair to the sector in this area, that does not remove the problem of the liquidity. The average weighted price countrywide today is about 201 naira 30-something kobo. Yet, the bulk of those who carry that burden, who pay that much, is insignificant compared to the customer population.
Exactly, because if you give people a choice,
yes, sir,
they would certainly say, away with the band A. Because there are other aspects of it as well, apart from the disparity.
Yes.
There are also those who say, isn't that a discrimination? Why would you have a certain group who have to enjoy?
Now,
they're paying for it, so it's not.
Yes, I've had that conversation about disparity, social discrimination, and all of those offending of the Constitution and things like that.
Right.
But you see, this is my own take, and I stand to be challenged. Right. It may seem as if I'm speaking for the sector now, but I stand to be challenged. But let's look at it from this perspective. All of us don't live in the same social network. There are those who live in Maitama. There are those who live in Yanya. For those of us who are familiar with the Federal Capital Territory, sir. There are those who live in Masaka. There are those who live in Deide. There are those who live in Gwagwalada. If you have that social class, as it were, and I say this with respect to whoever is staying anywhere, so that it doesn't seem as if maybe he has gotten some money somewhere and is living.
There are people who live in mansions in Deide. And there are people who live in boys' quarters.
I agree with you. But you see, the point I'm trying to make is that we don't drive the same car. We don't drive the same quality of car. We don't live in the same quality of houses. We don't go to the same schools. So we have never been equal. So let's not use that with profound respect to make it seem as if, asking those who are in band A to pay more than those who are in band B. In any case, the quality of social facilities in Band A network is even different from the quality of amenities. I mean, the roads in Masaka is not the road in Maitama. So why shouldn't they pay more from that perspective? But there is also this argument, sir.
Are they getting value for what they are paying for?
Exactly. See, if I'm paying XYZ, I should get value for that XYZ. If I should get value for it, and this is where we need to hold the discourse accountable for it. They must be held accountable for it.
All right, so all this is leading.
Yes.
All this is leading in one direction.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's one thing that really counts.
Yes.
The consumer who says, all of these beautiful documents, all the policies and everything, how will that ensure that when I step into my one-room apartment, I turn on that switch, there is power.
Okay.
That's what it's all about.
Exactly.
I think, like I said before, is certain judgments that ought to be put in place before implementation of new policies have not been, really put in perspective before policies like introduction of band A, band B, band C, or up to Z. Now, the basic principle of, providing steady and regular power supply to Nigerians is what the government is meant to achieve. And that is what the government has been working tirelessly, 24 hours, round the clock, to make sure that that product of electricity is provided. And then there are conditions under which certain policies you can introduce that will improve that achievement of steady power supply is achieved. Okay. Right now, what is really happening is, if you look at the dynamics of the sector, you would say probably the narrative of the sector is, at the moment, we have a current installed capacity of 14,000 megawatts, right? And then it means that the GENCOs are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that that installed capacity is realized. Yeah. If that installed capacity of 14,000 megawatts is not realized, then what is happening to the GENCOs? They all have given, all right, a target within which that 14,000 megawatts installed capacity is officially accepted as a policy document of the sector. So when that is not achieved, and then all the necessary inputs, like the generation companies, they are all there. And then each generation company is expected to generate X megawatt of power over a period of time. Therefore, if you are supposed to generate a GENCO is supposed to generate 2,000 megawatts and it is generating 2 megawatts, fundamentally something is wrong. Right. And then that has to be checked, and that has to be addressed so that that GENCO can generate the 2,000 megawatts based on its own input of the 14,000 megawatts installed capacity. Okay. Now look at the transmission sector. The transmission sector also has an installed capacity to transmit, let's say, 8,000 megawatts. To transmit 8,000 megawatts. What is the current strength of the transmission capacity? For the distribution companies, it is also the same. The distribution companies are supposed to distribute a given amount of power over a period of time. If at the moment, distribution company, based on the facts that are available before Nigerians, is generating or distributing a little over 5,000 megawatts, or a little over 5,000 megawatts. And then, on the basis of generating 5,000 megawatts, a policy is brought in to ensure that that 5,000 and above capacity is interpreted to, generate additional income for the sector.
All right, I get it.
So, for God's sake, something needs to be done.
All right, let me come back to you. One of the reasons some of the distribution companies give is that, you see, when they stand on the question of band, how many hours you get, that the real thing they're saying here is not just that we'll give you 20 hours per supply or ensure 18 hours. They said that is barring any extraneous circumstances that they cannot be held responsible for. In other words, circumstances beyond their control may determine whether that is achievable or not. And when we ask, what are those circumstances? Sometimes, for instance, when you have all these, how do they call them now?
Grid collapse,
vandalism. Vandalism, that is not, attributable to them, because there's nothing they can do about that. They're a distribution company. If people vandalize the assets, all, the infrastructure, then you can hardly hold the discos responsible for not meeting up to 20 hours. Well, the public would argue and say, well, if that is the case, then specify. Let us know that you're promising 20 hours or 18 hours if all things, as we say, are equal. But the trouble is they seldom are. And so for how long will we say there have been, now we don't hear of the term grid collapse anymore. There's a new term, okay. Disruption, or disturbances. The consumer doesn't understand. All we know is we want light, whether it's disturbance, disruption,
whatever
collapse,
they want to call
or
it.
fall down.
See, sir, I think it's just an environment of delinquency that we find. I mean, frankly, I mean, we can say it confidently because, unfortunately, even the Honorable Minister was trying to make excuse for them that the discos say they cannot. I mean, they cannot invest in their network. Excuse me. Let's do an audit of the discos first and foremost. Even if before we get to generation and transmission, let's even do an audit of the discos from privatization till date. Let them tell us how many injection substations each of them has built. I mean, this looks like a technical term. What is an injection substation? The facility that receives the power from transmission and then gives the power to the distribution company, and the distribution company is able to transport into our homes and offices and business environments. That's what. So it depends on at what voltage, maybe at 3 kV or 11 kV. That's what an injection. How many have they built across their franchise area since 2013 when this sector was privatized? Of course, they will come up with the excuse, which is why I said the liquidity issue will continue to be an ongoing conversation in the sector.
So in a way, some say, well, unless much needed funds are injected.
How much do we need, sir?
Okay.
We've done about 6 trillion, if not more than that. As we speak today, generation is being owed 4.5 trillion. That's the budget of about 1/3 of this country. It's only Lagos and Port Harcourt that is talking about trillion now. Every other state in this country, 34 states are talking about, not even FCT is talking, I'm not sure FCT is talking about trillions. Generation alone is owed 4.5. So how much are we going? If there was no privatization, how much would we have spent? With privatization, we spent almost 6 trillion, if not more than 6 trillion. So how much more do we need? Already, even this policy, this one of these documents that is talking about revenue, is talking about $125 million. When you convert that to naira, don't we know? So how much do we really need to get the power sector out of the ICU? How much?
Well, it is understood, since at least from people who call in and speak about this, they say the few subnationals who have become players, distribution is a lot better in them. Well, is this the situation? Or these are just reports that we've heard? Some of us cannot really say because we have not stayed long enough in those states as to determine if they are much better or if services are much better. But the bottom line still is all the government's efforts and what we have coming from this document are geared towards making the sector better and improving the I mean, the most important part of it is let's generate. Sometimes we have the figures and they say, oh, generation has increased up to XYZ. And we're supposed to be happy about that. But the thing is, generation that doesn't translate to distribution. I mean, there's no impact.
Of what value?
Of what value? So if you generate using your
and I can't see it in my house.
And I can't see it, then, well. So how will this sector be up and running as to make this new policy succeed? Okay. That's the big question.
Okay,
now.
I think he has already given the solution. That after privatization, the distribution companies ought to be able to say if they have been able to add value into the system, like investing in the distribution substations. How many distribution substations? From 2012 to 2013 to date, how many new injection distribution substations have been added into the system? You will find that probably just a few politically sensitive projects have been added to the system. And the major area where the bulk of Nigerian customers, where the bulk of Nigerians live, that needs those new injection substations for them to have stable and quality power supply, you will find that it is the same injection substations that they inherited during privatization, before privatization, that they are still using till today.
Okay.
It's a major issue.
Well, let's bring someone else into this conversation. I think we can now be joined by Dr. Sam Amadi, who at some point in time was chair of NEC, the Electricity Regulatory Commission. Dr. Amadi, good to see you. We're expecting that you...
Hello, thank you.
All right.
Well, I came in late. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, well, I like to think that you've at least listened to some part of the conversation, and would like your take on this national integrated electricity policy and what it is going to do to the state of this industry. The most important for many, and in fact all electricity consumers, is how will it add value to what we have now? And then the old argument of Band A, Band B, to the extent that trust Nigerians, very witty. They have they have devised some other, coined something else, and they say it's neither Band A or B, it's Bandit. That's happening too.
I think thank you for having me. I had to rush from another meeting. Anyway, I think let me start with the band issue. When the band was done, I was on air with you, and I said with NEC, vice chairman, and other commissioner, but I thought it was very unfortunate because NEC had to do what it has to do to raise money, and that the band didn't make regulatory sense to me because primarily, you just say, okay, fine, there's a category of customers who have more supply, minimum of 20 hours, and you're not getting new supplies to the system. So what that means is that two things possible. You either will not give them 20 hours, or you give them 20 hours by taking from those who have, it's a simple arithmetic. If you have only 200 megawatts and can give an average of 10 hours to everybody, then you want to give some people 20. You have to give some people 4 or 3 or less than that to give this one. But if you had new capacity coming in, let's say another 2,000 megawatts, fresh power, able to deliver them to the grid, to the homes, then you cannot say, we want to prioritize this 20,000 or 2,000 megawatts for customers who can pay a premium, in which case you are not going to affect the status quo of those who are consuming less than, who are not on that ban. But so I thought it was really a wrong strategy, because if I was there, I would tell them that, look, we have to increase the tariff. Look, this is what it is. One, we don't have the capacity right now to supply satisfactory power to all Nigerian customers.
Mm-hmm.
What? Because you don't have the power. Yes, we have improvement. I mean, it was, I saw the story that we will now do 5,000. By the time I left in 2015, December, we had done at a time 4,800. And after I left, like February, after I was no longer there under Fashion, they hit 5,000 plus. So this is going in a circle. There's nothing we've done really. You know, you can have a peak time of 5,000. We have more than 14,000 maybe capacity, but we can't do more than 4,000 at any time. So you don't have power. That's number one. Number two, the market is not solvent, meaning that you don't have enough money, meaning in terms of liquidity, customers pay. So this expanding the tariff is a way of saying, even with the devaluation and all the fiscal monetary policy changes, the industry has become less so. So, for example, for a $200 million, let's say, for example, industry, with devaluation, probably we're now 120. So there is a shortage, a gap financial. And so NEC needed to fill it. That was what it's all about. So we are going to suffer this for some time. I heard that they want to increase Band B, which means Band A is not giving enough. And people are being smuggled there to Band A. But let's leave the ban. That was an attempt to square the circle. That's just nothing they could do. They needed to respond to fiscal challenge, not because of power, not because of regulatory or operational. Then the second issue is around the integrated power plant program. It's nice. I mean, revenue, energy planning, and all the systems, integrating everything and getting the states, the local government coming together, federal government and states, and then creating a roadmap would somehow improve the policy environment and the operational environment of the party. But look at the problem now. I'm worried about the recent changes with states. States are now all setting up regulatory agencies. Enugu got their own, Edo has got their own, Ondo has got their own, I think Imo has got their own. Enugu, that was the first. By now, Enugu should be off the grid. But Enugu cannot. Enugu has asked for another dispensation from NEC. Now, this is the problem we're going to. We're going to move from a national grid that is weak to 36 totally useless grids. That's a danger. These states have no capacity to really begin to do regulation. I mean, for example, Enugu, with all the good paperwork they have done, doing a great job, they have only 72 megawatts on the average from the grid, 72 megawatts. And so, like I told the chairman of the Regulatory Commission, you're setting a market with 72 megawatts, and you're busy doing more of the regulatory side of it, instead of doing more of the transaction to get in more power, so that while NEC regulates the 72 megawatts, you create additional power that you can begin to manage. And then when your power is up to 400, 500 megawatts or 200 megawatts or 300 megawatts, you can now think around regulation. And so this is what we're doing. And that's not good. This country has one of the best standard regulations. We don't have power. So people ask me, Sam, you boast that you did a great job. Of course, we did a great job. Our regulations can stand anywhere in the world. But you know what? There's no power. We spend time building fancy things. But the basics that Egypt did well, project development, created power. And I remember when I was NEC chairman, I used to argue with Mr. Ayo. And I used to say, the market has to. I said, no. Even if you have a redundancy, if I was the president, I would create 40,000 megawatts. I won't care about whether there's a market for it. If you have the power, if you have the capacity, the distribution network, the network, then let market evolve. China did the same thing. You don't begin to create first-class institutions when you have no commodity. you create commodity, and then you learn by doing. The market evolves. So my worry here is that we spend a lot of time, still, putting all the fancy things on paper, but the basic things about supplying, like the panelist said, supplying power to homes, the basic things we lag behind. So if I was advising the government, I would say, you know what, for now, let's be real, forget politics. Let nobody say, when I become president, I'll do better. No, let's allow this power to run for some 6-7 years of consistent improvement. So we know that, look, we need to have X amount of power. This is why we add this the gap. We need the X amount of transmission capacity and distribution. And every year, there's a difference between output and outcome. The government may not have changed the outcome, meaning 24/7 hours power, but they have improvement in output. So we have this is the measurable output. This is the output. In the short term, those outputs may not immediately create a new outcome, but those outputs will inevitably lead to an outcome where we can now take for granted 20 hours power, 22 hours power. So the first step is, let's sit back and say, what are the things that need to be done in terms of, first, make sure that the power available can be wheeled out. Focus on that. Make sure that the one that you're going to wheel out can be distributed. So you need to look at, do we need to change the distribution, reset it, and get institutional players to take over from these guys in an orderly market peer-reviewed process. This is the thing to do, the basic things to do before we start talking about this fancy-sounding consultant put together massive framework that doesn't result to much.
All right, let's come to you again, the analysts, the power sector analyst, Mr. Fadigbe. And here we've heard about this. Well, the government has this document out now, and it's all agreed that, fine, fantastic document. How do we make it work?
I think one of the things, how to make it work is one of the things that Dr. Amadi has said and Oga Mohammed has also said. But there are also conversations around the fact that why don't we begin to see how manufacturers can enjoy some kind of, I'm looking for the right word now, some kind of more liberal atmosphere rather than the current policy where residential customers have seem to enjoy better atmosphere. What am I trying to say? Residential customers may not be able to pay as much as manufacturers. So when you allow manufacturers some liberty, some space, and they are able to take more power, we have 13,000 megawatts capacity, but we have never done beyond 5,000 at best for us. Even the last one that the minister celebrated with a lot of glee, just addition of 65 megawatts. So let's even say we're able to do 6,000 megawatts. With 13,000 capacity, we still have about 7,000 megawatts stranded somewhere. So why don't we look for a policy that will allow manufacturers to take more? If we have the data on what they spend on alternative energy, we will see what we are losing from the grid. So for me, one of the ways by which this policy can really work is to say, okay, let us begin to see how those who can pay, the manufacturers especially, one of the advantages in that is that, one, it will also catalyze the economy. There will be employment. The power that you are not able to evacuate from the generating stations, you are able to evacuate it. More money will come into the sector. And so it's likely to have the tendency to drop the pressure on the liquidity challenge that the sector is currently facing. So I think very strongly that we need to begin to encourage our manufacturing sector by giving them some kind of rebate. NEC is involved in that methodology. In that tariff methodology management, and they can readily look at it and say, okay, this is the direction we want to go. Otherwise, we go back, if we go in the direction of residential customers or across the board band B customers, Honorable Minister was trying to use a clever word, regularize. The truth of the matter is that there's going to be upward adjustment in tariff.
So, and already...
that is the truth.
Well, already the minute that is mentioned, of course, you know that people will be up in arms. And,
oh, yes,
already
definitely.
The conversation has gone on people resisting groups.
So there will be more theft.
Absolutely.
The money that they want will not come in. I mean, that's just the bitter truth.
So this is where we are with this. Well, again, we'll put the same question to you
it's
from
a cyclical
your perspective.
discussion.
Yes. Yes, and we do know that there are many pressure groups that have already started talking about this and saying they would resist the true thing, which is an upward review.
Well, let me add to what he has said, that at the moment we have installed capacity of 14,000 megawatts. And of that 14,000 megawatts, there is stranded power that is not being utilized. That if it is captured and utilized, it will create additional huge source of, empowering or generating the revenue for the distribution companies if you are able to, the manufacturing sector, give them a rebate, give them regular power supply, revenues will go up.
Okay.
So obviously, the most important challenge that the minister has right now is to make sure that that installed capacity of 14,000 megawatts is realized in the benefit of Nigerians.
All right. I do understand that a number of people are trying to, contribute to this through the phones, and let's see if we can get one or two of those calls through. Right. Okay. So anyhow, that has not been possible. But again, let's just flip over to Dr. Sam Amadi for him to give us his concluding remarks on how we can, as they say, get out of this quagmire.
Well, a couple of things. I think I agree with my friend that the issue of manufacturers. You see, we are going to be smart with scarcity. We don't have all the supply. In many countries in the world, the policy of government is that commercial customers pay less. So you subsidize commercial customers, residential subsidize. And the idea is very simple. It has impact on inflation, cost of goods, and of course on economic growth, like you mentioned. So that's it's a point. But here in Nigeria, our own policy is the other way around. It's a reverse policy. So the commercial subsidize the residential, because of course we have a very poor socioeconomic indicators are very poor, with 153 million at least in multidimensional poverty. You can imagine how much is disposable income that's going to be directed to utilities, power, energy, fuel, education, and other. So there is socioeconomic consideration for cross-subsidizing poor consumers makes sense. But the problem is that we don't see a strong and coherent subsidy framework.
Okay.
So it puts a toll on utilities. So each time you hear them talk about the sector subsidizing, it means that the revenue that's supposed to flow to the operators are used to subsidize. But elsewhere, the subsidy money probably comes outside the sector as part of social security protection for oftentimes exactly. So that's what the first problem. The second issue that I think that we have the so-called stranded power, meaning the power that the generators can send to the grid but can't send because either they are gas constrained or transmission constrained or distribution constrained. Those capacities ought to be unlocked, and unlocked with, let's say, if we have, let's say, extra 6,000 megawatts, so we can say like 2,000 goes back to general distribution.
All right.
4,000 for premium customers, institutions, commercial. So We just have to be flexible but consistent to solve this problem, but it will not be a quick fix.
All right. So, and just on that note, we'll end this part of our program tonight, this first discussion. So I'd like to thank you, Dr. Sam Amadi. Thank you for joining us and availing us of your thoughts. Thank you very much. Back here in the studio, a big thank you to Idris Mohammed, former MD CEO of the Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cyril.
Thank you. And for Bodi Fadipe, Power Sector Analyst, we thank you for being here again.
My pleasure,
Good to
sir.
see you. It's been a while. But again, the conversation continues. So, well, up next, the Special Seats Bill and Women's Political Representation, why it matters. Stay with us.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, we turn dark into light, we build solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Ethnicity is unique, we have more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, strengthening unity, we know they carry lives. We are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
The federal government of Nigeria wants vandals of national assets, electricity transmission towers, cables, and other facilities to desist from this act of sabotage. Vandalism is a serious crime punishable under the law. Vandalizing electrical equipment will affect millions of Nigerians, including your loved ones. Remember that national assets belong to all of us, hence the need to protect them. Report all cases of suspicious movement around electrical facilities to security agencies. When you see something, say something. This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation in collaboration with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, NCTC, Office of the National Security Advisor.
Bill and women's political representation and why it matters. And I'm being joined now by Dr. Chidozie Aja, his Special Advisor, Legislative Affairs to the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives. Thanks for being with us tonight.
My pleasure.
All right. And I would also like to welcome to this program Dr. Salome Osia, is Advisor Policy and Interparliamentary Affairs, also to the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives. Thanks for being here.
A pleasure.
All right, so this is about the Special Seats Bill and women's political representation and why it matters. So to just set this whole issue in context, the Special Seats Bill, why is that necessary?
Thank you so very much. The Special Seats Bill is so very necessary at this moment of our national development because women are actually much underrepresented in governance. There is need to ensure that women are carried along, that women participate, and that they are part of decision making.
All right, so that in a nutshell. Well, this has been on, if I can say, forever. what we have come to see as women's low participation in governance. And it's just not just governance alone. It all begins from the political space. When you have very few women, it follows that in governance there'll be fewer still. And attempts have been made in the past for what we have seen, which has ended up being mere tokenism. Now, this bill surely needs to go beyond that. So, from your perspective, talk to us about it.
This particular bill, like you said, it didn't start with this assembly. Let me give you, with regards to the 9th Assembly, for example, there were several bills, gender-sensitive bills, like, okay, let us try to include the women. Let us increase participation within this space for women. But unfortunately, the 5 gender bills failed. And they failed largely because of lack of understanding. Most of the legislators did not even understand what it is that they were voting on. It was a case of lumping everything together. Oh, their gender bills. Automatically, they did not want to understand what it was all about. We're in a society where we have gender biases greatly ingrained in our system. Cultural, religious, it seeps into everything. So by the time you have a house that is filled with men, and you now tell them, oh, women have rights, and where? So it wasn't surprising that the bills failed. After the whole process, we did a research. Let's look into why did these bills actually fail, and we understood some of the things we understood was advocacy was a bit low. It didn't start on time because of the COVID-19 situation. That was the 2019 period, and by the time it started, there was no easy movement within this space. The reception was already, you know how it is. The male is a male-dominated area, and automatically they're defensive when you hear we want rights for women. But in this particular time, we're trying to advocacy starting quite early.
Okay. So now, having taken a look at what happened in the past and why a bill such as this didn't fly, you've gone back, taken a big look and reworked a few things. So many Nigerians say, now what is in it? How is it different from those things that couldn't go through anywhere? How is it different? Is it the language that it's couched in, or is it the provisions that it makes? Or, as you said, you started the advocacy early enough, but what's different? What's in it?
Well, the difference between the seat reservation bill before the current assembly and that before the 9th assembly is just very small and simple. In the 9th assembly, that particular bill sought to reserve seats for women in the House of Representatives, that is to say, 2 seats per state for women. In the Senate, 1 seat per state for women. But this particular bill in this current 10th assembly only made a reduction of the number of seats to be reserved for women in the House from 2 per state to 1. That is to say, 37 extra seats for women in the House as against 74 in the previous assembly. One of the concerns raised then in the 9th assembly was issues bordering around cost of governance, wherein a bulk of the opinion held that 74 extra seats in the House alone could be so high. So this is essentially the difference.
So now you have, what are you looking at, the extra seats now?
Good. The extra seats that the bill is looking at now is 1 each state in the Senate, being for 36 states, and then for the Federal Capital Territory, that is 37 seats in the Senate. Extra, reserved for women.
Right.
In the House, the same, 36 plus FCT, 1 per state, and FCT 37. Then in the state houses of assembly, 3 per state. In each state house of assembly, just 3 per state.
Well, an interesting argument which was talked about here has to deal with the cost of governance, which you've just mentioned. Now, whichever way you look at it, there are Nigerians who believe that even now it is huge. And yes, while the idea of legislating to bring more women into it is one that's applauded, an extra 37 each into the states would further increase the cost of governance. So some would say, why not under existing representation say of all, for what we have now, let's make it mandatory that XYZ number of women must be among those who are elected. Now, was that why the earlier bills failed?
Partly, that was why it failed earlier. 1, because it was assumed, I don't know how correct, that those seats were actually for the male. And majority of the male within the political system would never want to allow for a level playing ground such that to encourage women to participate in the process. And where women are excluded, how do you expect them to participate, to be part of governance? Now, you will recall that at a point in time in this nation, the principles of federal character was introduced and enshrined in the Constitution. And the essence was to deliberately give room for development of certain areas of the country. And today, having applied that principle and ensured mainstreamed into our system, at this moment, there is no part of Nigeria that cannot provide enough human resources that can handle any organization anywhere in the world.
All right. Well, that may be true.
Okay.
But again, the process, the question people ask is, on this representation, fine as it is it the best within those places that are usually picked to do the representation? And that would be applicable to this as well. When we do have this 37, what are the challenges you envisage on how this would work out? They have specific seats which are reserved. How would you, for instance, well, with this bill and the advocacy, you're pushing across, enlightening people about it, how do you think you would ensure that these additional seats which are reserved for women are also given on a fair and level playing ground, that they are not taken over by the elite?
That's, excuse me, that has always been one of the fears, because even from the last assembly, during the research into why the bills failed, there were questions as to the possibility of creating super senators. That, okay, once these women come into play, then they become overpowerful. We can't, what is the fear there exactly? Because to start with, what the women are asking for is this: let us have options.
Right. Now, I get what you say. What I'm referring to actually is creating a level playing ground for the women who would so occupy these, reserved seats, specific seats, in trying to solve a problem that you do not create another where a certain class of women would appropriate those seats.
My response to that would be, first, we look at the case of the men, right?
It's happening.
Or the regular, It's happening.
Exactly. And so if we haven't been able to stop this, how are we going to stop this one that's new? Some people have appropriated these positions and this is true. It's proven. They have appropriated these positions to themselves, either through huge resources at their disposal, or other means. I'm twisting all kinds of things. Now we're creating this because we need to have more women in these positions.
Yes.
All I'm saying is, how are we going to make sure that you do not have these women who would destroy the level playing ground and ensure that those who should have the opportunities don't get it?
Let's start
creating other monsters.
Okay. Let's start with something first, right? Can we even allow them to even enter into the space first? We are not even allowing the women to enter into the space first. We're all asking questions about, oh, what if? The amount of what ifs I've heard, we are not even talking, have we even considered, okay, the men, we agree that there is no level playing field. What have we done to try to level the playing field?
Exactly, that's what we're asking. Not that we're saying, what if? No, we're saying we should go the extra and provide, find a way to make sure that this is a level playing field.
So why is it that in the case of the women, we want to start that? Okay, let us start with that. It will happen. It is unavoidable. It is the political space. It will likely happen. But the thing is this, we shouldn't use the fear of, oh, because it's going to happen, we should ensure that we close that space.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm trying to understand.
It's not saying we're saying close it because of the space. We're saying with the benefit of knowing what
has happened.
We should be able to say, look, we have learned a lot where people are hijacking these things. Let us go the extra and make sure that when we have this, it doesn't happen. It's not saying let's not do it because it might happen. That's not what I'm saying. Right.
Okay, generally, I want us to understand that politics everywhere, not just in Nigeria, not just in Africa, but globally, is a struggle.
Yes.
Struggle with men or amongst people that command and control resources.
Good.
And people that ordinarily may command and control people. Now, since it's a struggle, you don't expect that it will just be fair. There must be cases of arm twisting, maneuverings, and all those. But every system has its own safeguards.
What are the safeguards in this?
Beautiful. Now, we must also remember that Nigerian democracy is still developing.
Exactly.
Much as there are safeguards in our system, because major part of our problem is not just that the laws are not there, but the operators of the law and the people benefiting from the system. Now again, the legislative process is clear, and it is a known, very well-defined process that has opportunities for input to be made. Whilst this concern you have raised is the general concern within the system, whatever safeguards we are going to begin to see with the electoral reforms, with the constitutional reforms that are ongoing as well, such will be so fine-tuned to take care especially of this case of maneuvering amongst women that you just raised as a concern. I am absolutely sure that in the end of the day, there will be a solution.
Right. You've embarked on advocacy to start early. How far have you gone, and what's the range you're expecting to carry so many people, as many as possible, on this, so that you can say to yourself, where the old bills failed, this one, before the National Assembly, we're convinced it will scale through?
Okay. With, like I just said before, right? With the benefit of hindsight, you see that, okay, a lot of people were not galvanized. But this time around, we are hoping to carry people along straight from the grassroots. It is not a situation of, we're leaving things to chance or just focusing on only the legislators that are going to be voting. They are key people because they are the ones doing the actual voting. No doubt about it. But advocacy has to cover all the whole population. And we know the impact that the religious leaders and the traditional rulers, we know the significant impact or role that they play within our political space, whether we like to admit it or not.
Right. So it's a good thing. You say, well, it's not just the legislators. Yes, the legislators will be voting, but it's not them because they are also representing the people.
Yes.
So it's the people who will now ensure that their representatives do what they want them to do, which is what it should be.
Yes.
Right? Okay. We'll take this report as part of this.
Representation of women in governance and politics has been a long-standing issue. While the advocacy for women participation in politics is gathering momentum, many believe it is not translating to appreciable number of women in elective positions. This is evident in the number of female legislators in Nigeria's bicameral legislature, which currently stands at 19 female lawmakers out of a total of 469 lawmakers in both chambers of the National Assembly. Proponents of special seats for women in parliament argue that it is expedient not only for fairness and inclusivity, but also for closing the gaping gender gaps in governance and politics.
At this point in our nation, the principles of fairness and inclusivity cannot be overemphasized. Globally, Nigeria lags behind in women representation in parliament, among the lowest countries who have implemented this affirmative action.
During the constitutional amendment voting in the 9th Assembly, the Special Seats Bill failed to scale through in the Senate and House of Representatives. Notably, the bill has been reintroduced in the current 10th Assembly and has scaled second reading in the House of Representatives, but not without some steaming debate.
In the Committee of Nations, when we talk about inclusivity, how are we going to be looked at? Women representation for physically challenged persons are things that we need to look at and work outside the box to correct them. So I will plead urge us to support this bill.
As accepting this bill is against democratic principle and is undermining the fundamental human right of those ones that are popular in their own constituencies, Mr. Speaker. And if we continue doing so, we are also undermining the political parties. The political parties should decide whether women should contest in their own platform or not.
While it is a global trend to adopt some form of electoral quota system to address women underrepresentation in elective positions, leaders in the National Assembly are in the vanguard of advocacy for enacting enabling laws.
We give specific attention, particularly to the women committees, and ensuring that we don't leave one single woman representative without a key leadership position in the House, so that they can use that platform to actually advance the cause of women.
Through the spectacles of the men and the spectacles of the women, the lenses will see better. That is why we're here.
Please, I want to use this medium to cry out loud to our political parties. We need political party reforms.
It offers a unique and compelling way to spotlight the urgent need for greater female representation in leadership and decision-making processes.
The Special Seats Bill currently in Parliament proposes the creation of one additional legislative seat to be contested by women only for each state and the Federal Capital Territory, in the Senate and the House of Representatives, which would amount to a total of 74 special seats. Having scaled second reading, the Special Seats Bill is now before the Committee on Constitution Review for further legislative action, and many will be watching for its progression in the constitution alteration process. From the National Assembly, Mitaire Ikben.
Elective and appointive positions in the ongoing constitutional reforms. Are you wondering what this is about?
It is very simple. Gender quota is a policy that ensures a fair representation of both men and women in leadership and governance spaces.
It is designed to create a more balanced and inclusive environment by setting a minimum threshold for either gender, recognizing that both men and women bring valuable perspectives to decision making.
For example, This is in place in Rwanda, where women make up 61% of the parliament, and in Namibia, where women make up 46.2%.
In Nigeria, without a gender quota, women in parliament are 4.7%.
With a gender quota,
we can change this narrative.
Join the movement.
So staying with us, and still about the Special Seats Bill and women's political representation where it matters. From the report we just watched there, we heard, women speaking out and saying the political parties, and that's always where we start from, the political parties themselves must find a way to reform. What you see in the parties is mere tokenism. Women are usually just treasurers, or when they go beyond that, woman leader. And that's it. And that hardly takes them. And it would seem as if this, even where you have parties who mouth such things as we are gender sensitive, you don't find women rising in those parties. So how so should we speak to the parties to reform in themselves?
With regards, that was one of the matters that came up within the last assembly, that reform to party, to workings within the parties, to ensure that women, there are specific seats, or a percentage of those that will be coming out for election are women. But as per usual, it failed. And that is mainly because we have to focus on the fact that these spaces are male-dominated to start with. So you talking about the rights of women, like you mentioned, it's automatically taken as, well, they are present. Look at them. We have women. That is the woman leader there. That is the secretary. That's our treasurer. Those people, are they not women? As long as it is not mandated, that the political parties are not mandated by a law to ensure that certain percentages are allocated to women, it will not get done. Because to them, the honorable members that we're talking about that are saying, oh, why should we give special seats? They are still part of the party.
Exactly, because they come from the parties.
Exactly.
And they still wield influence on the parties. So it's something that requires a lot more push, as I was saying earlier on, to get through. Again, one of the challenges women face in the political space is the resources to do all of this. And there have been suggestions that where parties charge over the moon figures to allow people to participate or run for positions, they should also look at a situation where you make it either free for the women, or if they must pay, something that is just, in fact, small in comparison, because that's the only way. The use of money in politics ensures that many women are not given the space.
Absolutely. If you look at, if you recall what happened leading to the 2023 elections, you'll find out that most of the major political parties actually offered women free tickets or free forms, free nomination forms.
Yes, only, because some of them, we understand, did that to score points, media bliss.
Media bliss.
Only advising the women in the long run to step down,
exactly.
for the male counterparts.
Now, you find out that that is the essence of trying to, by law, reserve these specific seats, such that whatever happens, there must be women. And it is not as if it's a thing that will last forever. It's just a temporary measure.
By the time that you build the capacity and also the awareness, then people know that they have, they have the right to participate and aspire to any of those places, and many more
good we want to
go.
And then you would find out also that the nation would have begun to reap the benefits of having these women in governance.
All right. We'll take a short break here. This conversation will continue shortly.
Inviting you to join the Side by Side Niger campaign.
At Side by Side Niger, we are asking for just one thing: fair representation of men and women in government through elective and appointive positions.
Why do we need more women in parliament?
Why do we need more women in government?
Only 4 out of 109 senators are women. Only 16 out of 360 House of Representatives are women. In the history of Nigeria, there has never been a female governor. Only 7 out of 36 deputy governors are women. In 14 states, women affairs matters are being headed by men.
But guess what? Women are half the population of Nigeria.
Women also make up to 47.5% of voters. More women should be part of making laws and policies that impact their lives.
Join the movement.
Earlier comments, you did talk about some of those factors that hinder women's participation. Looked at cultural factors, religious factors, and so many of that. And of course, the environment here where we have struggled with the issue of violence, which also has been one of the key reasons where most women would rather stay away from. So this is one of the hurdles that you need to cross. That's why I said it's not just the legislators now. There is also a greater advocacy of the people, the environment, people, because the legislators also come from the parties and from the larger society. So how far-reaching will these efforts be?
With this advocacy, we're planning to go to the local governments we're planning to go as to the basis basically. We're thinking of starting even with the Iyaloja, Iyalode, the Umuada. We're trying to get everybody, the different social groupings, to sensitize them. This is what this is about. You need to have a voice. You didn't just put the person that you voted for there just for their own selfish or personal interests. They are there for you. Now, what is going to be good for you? It's to sensitize them that when women are also at the table, we look at things in a different way. We look at, you tend to look at the issue of maternal mortality. A man explaining it to you is definitely different from when a woman is at the table and explaining it to you because she has had the experience of seeing or losing somebody. And she's a woman that has probably gone through the same things that other women are going through. It is easier it enriches the space basically. So going to the grassroots and getting buy-in of these people, we believe is very key. Their buy-in is also what is going to tie to their discussions with their own obas, their traditional rulers, and having these same discussions with the religious leaders, because we know these people wield severe influence on the population.
Just like Dr. Osia said, the traditional institutions also wield a lot of influence, and they are, as they say, the custodians. They're the ones who say no, and it's with many of them that you begin to have this, you begin to see this idea that, well, women are just meant to stay and look after the family and not be exposed to the dangers out there, which is what they call politics. So that's another angle for your advocacy.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes. It's really another angle for our extensive advocacy, which has just begun, and we intend to drive it through. And communication is key. the right messages, they are key also. And the media, we expect that the media will effectively partner to ensure that it is driven down to the grassroots, and to ensure that the right messages being passed to the traditional institution, the right messages being passed to religious institutions will, in the end of the day, form the opinion at that level, and will translate to the requests that will be made to parliamentarians that will have the voting rights.
What would you say is more the issue about women in these positions? Is it the challenges? I'm talking here about which is more challenging for women. Is it traditionally held views about relegating women to just housekeeping and household chores? Or is it the huge resources that go into our politics that people have tried to put a cap on it without much success? Which one is more challenging for the women? Because I've hosted programs here where people had advanced such arguments as that why should political organizations hold nocturnal meetings where they go to clandestine meetings in the wee hours of the morning? Why do they do that? Is it deliberate to make sure that it's only the men who can attend such? Because some would say, why would I allow a woman, my wife, to go out at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. to go and attend a political meeting in some place where I don't know? And these factors, because of certain cultural issues and religious issues, don't stand in the way of women. But why do parties do that? Any idea why do they do that? Why do the men do it?
Well, in my personal view, just simply because they can. That's the thing. If your main thought process is we men are the ones in charge, you do not think about any other thing. So the only thing you are thinking about is my fellow men, not my fellow politicians. That covers the spectrum. That could be any gender. So at this point, it's a case of, well, we, the movers and shakers, we the men can have our meeting at any time because we're in control, because we're in charge. And we know that it is more, like you said, it's more difficult for a woman to keep going into all those kind of meetings every time. So it's not something they think about at all. It just comes naturally to them. I was having a discussion with somebody, and the person kept on going that he doesn't believe in any gender, he doesn't believe there's anything wrong with the system the way it is. The status quo is fine. And I told him, I said, that is fine. You are talking from a place of privilege. That you do not have to think of any other thing except the fact that you just are.
How much of this do you think is the orientation responsible for? I mean, children are born and, yes, different, but how much of it can you attribute to the orientation people get from childhood about, whether people, regardless of their gender, should be allowed a level playing field in matters like this?
Yes, I believe that orientation from the family, from birth, as children grow, is a significant contributing factor to this issue. Meanwhile, I believe that all the issues raised contribute significantly to the entire problem. But then, drawing an example from my very self, I'm a father of 3 daughters, and as much as possible, I try not to make my daughters feel as if their own gender is the gender that takes the back seat. Why do I say so? Because these daughters are exceptionally smart in their different fields, top of the classes where they are, and I made them to understand that there is no much difference between the male and the female. The same two eyes, the same mouth, the same hands, the same legs. So what's the difference? Go out there and contest. And true, it has shaped my family. Now, but I know also that there are some families where they will always put the girl child in the back seat, where the girl child will be made to serve the house, put in a disadvantaged position, as if that particular girl child had come to escort other male children to the world. And that automatically puts that girl child in a disadvantaged position.
The boys go out to play football, the girls go stay back to clean and scrub and cook.
And it affects the psyche of that girl child as she grows. That's the truth. So the society needs to do more. Sincerely.
Let me ask you this. You probably have heard it said sometimes. How true is that? That you know, for those who argue against gender issues, they say, look, well, women are they are the biggest enemies of women. So you find that it's the women who, do you agree with that?
I completely disagree with that statement. Completely. Somebody raised that same point today about, if a woman comes out and every woman rallies behind that woman, that the woman was going to win. That because women have the population. And my question to that person was, so you mean that one woman is the only option we have? What we are asking for with this seat is, let us have options. There are capable women within our society. Let us have the option to choose. You give us so many men, then you now put one woman and say, all of you should rally behind that.
Well, sometimes the argument is they've seen women who have gone as far. I mean, those who have really worked hard to get up to the point of nomination, and the result hasn't been encouraging, which was what led to what people called at that time one woman, one vote. And that is the meaning to the integrity and the status of such women who actually go out there and fight. And the argument is, okay, at least there has to be one person. But the question I asked is, if you say there was no woman standing behind her, why was there not one man standing behind her?
Why no man?
Right. So, well, in the process of working towards getting this bill passed through, and, well, being a legislative aide yourself, you've seen how business is conducted in the parliament. And one question that's raised all the time is, could there possibly be other ways to, apart from the parliament, to get women's voices heard, representation?
Yes, there are several ways outside of parliament to try to raise the representation of women in politics or in governance. There are. But the question is, how long will it take to ensure a change comes? Change is one of the, in fact, it's about the most resisted thing. Anywhere you go in the world, there is resistance to change. And the essence of law is to engineer the society. That is where the legislature comes. That is why it's as if that the legislature offers that option to quickly catalyze this change. If not, there are many other ways, but it will take time.
All right. Yes.
Well, I totally align myself with what my colleague has said. when it comes to women representation or within the space, that was why one of the bills from the last assembly also focused on nomination by the executive, that certain percentage should be women. But as usual, or as expected, it failed as well. So, but the interesting part is the popularization of these issues tend to bring awareness to it, and you tend to see that subsequent, like the new president, like the current president, ensure that they are increased, at least putting more women in place.
Right, and you know, but again, you've had people say, yes, current government has put in more women, but it is still a far cry from what is. And the expectation was that there would be more under this administration.
No doubt about that.
Right. Okay.
But since the legislature failed to do their own part, the executive at least is trying to step up to it. Like my colleague said, when it comes to change, the legislature would have actually sped up the whole process. But because they couldn't do that, that was why the executive, at least, is trying to do that.
All right, we'll take another short break here, and when we return, we'll round off this conversation. Stay with us.
Everyone, my name is Mariam Awais, a lawyer, activist, and a gender advocate. I'm committed to creating a more inclusive Nigeria. Over the years, I have worked tirelessly to ensure that women and children have access to justice, they have access to opportunities, and a voice in governance. But there's still so much work to be done in our country. Women continue to be underrepresented in leadership and decision-making roles, despite their immense contributions to society. The Side by Side campaign is about changing this reality. By supporting the Side by Side movement, we are taking a stand for Nigeria where every woman has the chance to lead, influence policies, and contribute meaningfully to national development. So I ask that you join me. We must advocate for the future we all deserve.
Joker Silva here. Now, how many of us can clap with one hand? How many of us can click with one finger? We need two hands to clap, two fingers to click. So how do we expect to move our nation forward with only the male population? There must be representatives of both the male and female of the population to move the nation forward. If you agree with me, please be part of the Side by Side Niger campaign for more representation in leadership.
I'm Right Honorable Adebo Edward Ogunlayi, Speaker of Oyo State House of Assembly and Chairman, Conference of Speakers of State Legislature. Today's event was a real eye-opener, not just for me, I'm sure, but for everybody else that participated in today's event. And we're happy that at the end of the event, we're able to agree that the 36 seats that are going to each state generally, is a welcome development. But we also know and identify that that is not the end of this advocacy for women in politics. Beyond that, we still advocate for more women in the conventional 360 seats in the House of Reps, and also in the 109 seats in the Senate. And not just that, it goes beyond the federal seats. It also goes down to the state seats, and most especially the local seats, which we all agreed on, that all politics is grassroots, and we would like to encourage more women to participate in politics, right from the grassroots, from the councillor to the local governments to the state houses of assembly, governorship, whatever the case might be. And we as a conference of speakers and from the Oyo State House of Assembly will always be there to support women in politics.
All right, back here, I'd like to take up from the last point made there, that all of this is without prejudice to the various seats in the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the state assemblies. In the case of the Senate, without prejudice to those existing 109 seats. The idea is to even encourage women to go for those as well, and the House of Representatives as well. Otherwise, you risk a situation where some will say, oh, well, at least you have your quota, go and contest for your quota. So is this part of your advocacy?
Absolutely, it is. You will recall that Section 48 of the Constitution provides for the number of seats in the Senate, Section 49 for the number of seats in the House of Representatives, and then Section 91 for the number of seats in the various state houses of assembly. Now, these special seats reserved for women are not part of these initially already existing prescribed seats. They are only seats that are meant to be a temporary measure just for 16 years, 4 election cycles, and reserved only for women. That does not preclude women from participating in election into those other seats
that are in existence.
So there are women that will prefer to go for such, and they will get it. And there are still women that will say, okay, what they want to go for is the ones that are reserved. But by and large, however, even if the idea for now is that even if women are blocked from the existing ones, they have something.
Yes, what do you have to say to that? Because it's also a possibility. I mean, once you're talking about it, it's a possibility. But to ensure that the advocacy is taken to that level, as to make both, all understand that this does not preclude women from challenging for those seats that are there now, that 109, before someone comes up and says, oh, you do have your reserved seats anyway, so go there.
That has been one of the response we've been getting from a number of honorable members, because theirs is, are they still going to come and contest for my seat?
Right.
Yes, they are. But the only thing is this, we're not trying to do this for you, we're trying to do this for the society. It is the society, we're trying to ensure that there's better representation, and that's what it is. So if women decide that, oh, okay, they want to go for the reserved seats, to be clear, it is not easy. Even the reserved seat is not an easy one, because that is at a state level. That is at a state level. It means that every woman going for that seat will be campaigning around the entire state. So there will be some women that will say, I'd rather go for my normal constituency and fight it out. And we expect that definitely there's still going to be pushback from some male legislators that no, if they're going to be getting special seats, then they should leave these ones for us. Everything is just boils down to advocacy, trying to explain to them.
So far, how would you rate the response you have been receiving since you started this from either specialized groups, lawmakers in the chambers, Nigerians generally? And I'd like to think that you, along the line, would have identified one or two very, very strong opponents to this. What's been your response and your engagement with people like that?
I would like to mention to us that in this process, personally, I expected very serious opposition from northern politicians. But the reverse is the case. I have noticed massive support for this bill, for this process, from northern politicians, northern parliamentarians. But you see, there are some southern counterparts that are actually against. Okay? Now, but generally speaking, the response to advocacy is massive. And I know it will snowball very shortly. People are beginning to be aware. People are beginning to understand the need and the benefits derivable from such.
From your outlook, how would you rate the reception of your message that you're taking across on people who come across to you? In other words, if you look at, there are traditionalists, staunch traditionalists, and you look at them and they espouse views that run contrary to everything you believe and the idea of all of this. Do you feel daunted by that?
Yes, sometimes it's at the initial time it was overwhelming. Like, really, these are the people we have to deal with. But when due to advocacy, so the more you have discussions with these people, and it was in this process that I realized the importance of male allies. Male allies were not properly activated. There is this belief that the male allies are only there for voting, at the voting point. No, they are not there only for the voting. They are also supposed to be part of the advocacy. There was one situation where I saw a male ally, one of the male honorable members, take on 4 to 5 of his other colleagues and went in like, nope, that is not how it should be. Because the discussion initially was with the woman, and all of them were like, oh, it's because you're a woman. And he stepped in and like, okay, I'm a man. And the discussion changed. So I believe that we need to properly utilize our male allies. They should not be quiet. If this is what you support, you are supposed to, or you're supposed to support it openly because you're trying to get to something. You're not a silent partner here. So, hopefully we'll get there. It's been a mixed kettle, but we're getting there.
All right. Well, I can only wish you the best as you carry on with this advocacy, and wish that you get the support of many more people. I do believe that having seen the task ahead, you're fully mobilized, that no section is left out in helping to drive the message. So your final word as we close.
My final word will be to encourage Nigerians, encourage the women folk. It's their time. They should rise up to the occasion. And the good Lord will help all of us.
Right, and for you?
It is a word to the men. The seat reservation does not take anything away from the man. It doesn't. It only creates an opportunity to enrich that space by including the women.
Well, it is on that note we'll end tonight's conversation. I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Chidozie Aja, Special Advisor Legislative Affairs to the Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure, sir.
And Dr. Salome Osia, Advisor Policy and Interparliamentary Affairs to the Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Right. And thank you all for being part of this program today. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.